Hello and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be building up and painting the Stug III 75mm assault gun from Airfix. This model is in 1 in 76 scale. It requires a skill level of 2 and should take an hour to complete. On the back of the box is a preview of the finished kit, and this is also useful as a colour guide and to show you where the decals go. So let's open it up and see what we get in the box. We have some instructions and a bag of plastic. On the back of the instructions is a guide which explains what all the symbols mean, where to cut, where to glue, etc, etc. But the big problem is, on the instructions themselves, they don't use any of these symbols, so you don't know when to glue, when to cut, you have to guess. So with everything out of the bag, it's time to try and get this thing assembled. So start off by removing the part that I need from the sprue. Then I clean up the edges before assembling them. This can be done with either a knife or file. And the first thing I put together is the large turning wheel for the tracks. I'm just dry fitting it here, but we'll go back and add some cement. And I also do a very similar process for the rear wheel. And also simultaneously off camera, I'm building up the other side of the tank, which naturally is the mirror opposite to this one. Next I glue on what appears to be two very small suspension arms, and this is very tricky to line up the pegs with the holes, but perseverance is key. Then after that I had to add on the top wheels, and these come in two halves, and once again with the instructions being so old, they don't clearly tell you how to do this, but I figured that the two halves need gluing together in such a way that you get a gap in the middle. And I did that for all three sets. And then I essentially have to do the same with the lower ones, except there's a lot more of them. The front facing ones have a little bit more detail on them, so that's how I could tell the difference. And it ends up just like an assembly line putting these on. And naturally I do the same for the opposite set. And by doing that I was able to get rid of a couple of sprues. And now I can move on to the more interesting aspects. These two gun components are push fit only, although that's not mentioned in the instructions. But they are glued into place for the next step, and the gun is the only part of this vehicle which is designed to move. I believe this is the exhaust section which I'm sticking to the undercarriage, and this won't be very visible in the final assembly. And now I can start attaching all the big pieces. So once the sides are on and almost fully set, I then add on the underneath. And that way I'm still able to move things until it fits into its final resting place. So I just have to hold it together for another minute or so. And then that's the main part of the tank built. And now I have all the additional details to add. Starting off with the hatches. One on the front and two on the top. It's nice to have the option to have these either open or closed. But because I don't have any figures to use with this kit, I'm keeping all mine closed. My tank knowledge isn't that great, so I don't know what all these parts are for, as some appear to be extra armour panels. There's a couple of spools added to the back, and these are here to hold a couple of spare wheels, and those are assembled the same way as the others, almost like gluing two dishes together bottom to bottom, and therefore leaving a gap in the middle. And it's these details which help add to the realism of the kit and help to sell the illusion of scale. And then I gingerly glue on a pair of aerials, being as careful as possible to make sure the thin plastic doesn't snap. And I also have to make sure I'm not heavy-handed when it comes to painting as well. There's also an armoured panel which slots into place on top of the tank. I'm assuming this is where a machine gunner would go. And now I have the barrel extension to assemble. The first two parts go together quite easily, even though they're a little bit warped. And I'm just going to slot this into place over the pre-existing barrel. I don't want to glue it on the off chance the barrel will stop moving. I also prepared the tracks as they are moulded into one piece. The tabs are cut off and I can pull the rest of it apart like a zipper. since the tank is fully assembled, now's a good time to prime it. And a neutral grey colour is always a good choice. I bust on some sand grey for the base colour. It would have been nice to use a rattle can, but I didn't have the appropriate colour. And once that's dried, I feed in the rubber tracks. This is quite a tight fit, so I have to make sure I don't break anything. And thankfully the tweezers help with that. I figured it would be best just to use super glue to glue both half of the tracks together. This left a little bit of a bump where the join was, but it wasn't too obvious, and I can live with that. And now I can turn my attention to the decals. I always cut mine down to each individual graphic. That way I don't risk any others sliding off when at least I expect them to. Thankfully these slide into place fairly easily, and they only need a little bit of a nudge to get into alignment. I have to repeat this 2 more times, one on the opposite side and one on the rear. Unfortunately the cross on the rear one split in 2 when I tried to remove it. I'm not sure how well you can tell on the close-up, so I have to be careful to make sure they're both aligned. And I think I managed to make it look like it was still in one piece in the end. Although this is where it is normally a good excuse to put some damage on the tank and hide the crimes. And the only real part of the tank which has any colour is the very tip of the barrel, which is black. At this stage it's a good idea to seal everything in with a matte sealer. This essentially acts as a save button like on a computer game, as it helps protect the paint that's already on the model. I'm using some brown panel liner to help create some extra definition, and this will bring out some of the tiny details. And then I give the lower part of the tank a couple of weathering passes. I use a sandy colour and a light brown, and this helps to create the illusion of a build-up of dirt and sand, plus it dulls down the blackness of the tracks. And to help seal in that weathering powder, I need to give it another pass with the matte sealer. And here's the completed Stug III 75mm assault gun. I believe this kit was first released in 1963, and the level of detail for such a small old kit is remarkable. It's not very often that I make these traditional vintage kits, but it does make a nice change, and I look forward to doing some more in the future. This kit actually came with some spare pieces of tank track, but they're supposed to be placed on the side of the tank covering up the decals, and I really didn't want them covering up, which is why I left them off. Thank you for watching. Don't forget, if I can do it, so can you.